The Process, a podcast about creativity and experimental music. In the world of experimental music, outcomes and accolades for creators can be uncertain and at times seem far and few between. Therefore, creators and practitioners of experimental music must embrace the one thing they will always have complete control over: the process. This podcast aims to understand this creative process by listening to new works and discussing them with their creators. Each episode focuses on one creator and their music. Understanding how and why they create can inform aspiring creatives and help audiences better understand and navigate experimental music. I'm Dr. Doug Bielmeyer, and I'll be your host as we explore the world of experimental music, creativity, and the human need to find purpose in their world and lives. This is The Process. Welcome to The Process. Today we'll be talking with William Sol, aka Prana Crafter. He writes under that moniker, describing his music. It's experimental, it's folk, it's jazz, it's improvisational. But at the end of the day, I think what sort of sets it apart maybe from some of the other music creators and composers and improvisers and musicians that we've had on the podcast is the fact that recording is so integral to the creative process for him. And this is something I definitely identified with as someone who is a recording and mixing engineer as well as a composer and music creator and musician. I often am part of the sort of production aspect or the post-production aspect of any recording of my work. So I'm not only writing the piece and creating it, but I'm also either mixing or even sometimes finalizing the recording of that work. So one of the things that I'm currently doing, I'm currently working on the next album, and I'm just going through take after take of different pieces. I've recorded with a lot of great groups over the summer, and their performances have been fantastic. And it's not that I'm sorting through like takes of mistakes, but I'm trying to find the take. And for anybody who's gone through the recording process before, or have had their music recorded who's listening, can probably identify with me on this, of this idea of the take. And what makes the take? You know, what is it? Is it that sort of quinta estina? Is it a level thing? Is it a technical thing? Is it a performance thing? Well, I think it's all those things sort of in combination. But one of the things that Will hits on as he's talking about how he makes his music, there's this inherent excitement in the early stages of the creative process, or at the beginning, or in that moment when you realize, hey, this could be a good thing. This could be the thing. So Will explains how these moments, or that moment, is a great one to capture throughout the recording process. So on today's episode, we listened to a piece from his Bodhi Cheetah's Choice album called Crystal Sky, Wooden Cloud. And we talk a lot about how throughout the creation of this song and the experimentation in the process of this song, he was really trying to record and capture, or use the recording to capture that excitement of the creative process, or that excitement of discovery. Without further ado, let's take a listen to Crystal Sky, Wooden Cloud and learn a little bit more about William Sol, aka Prana Crafter. William Sol, who records and performs under the name Prana Crafter, is a forest dweller and musician with a passion for sonic experiences and the intersection between music and consciousness. William has a PhD in psychology and a master's degree in social work, with current day-night jobs being a combination of teaching on the topic of integral psychology at the California Institute of Integral Studies and conducting psychotherapy with predominantly children and adolescents. William often utilizes music and expressive creativity in these sessions. As Prana Crafter, William has released 10 albums as well as contributing to over a dozen compilations. All albums consist of a large portion of the material being improvised in addition to the use of experimental recording and performance techniques. William highly values creative collaboration and has done musical visual art collaborations with artists including Thomas Bogert, Aubrey Naring, and Richard Bolos. On today's episode, we listen to Crystal Sky, Wooden Cloud from Prana Crafter's Bodhi Cheetah's Choice album, released on Beyond is Beyond Records.
I definitely am of that style where whenever I start something, it's always going to be somewhat spontaneous at first. Like that's just my comfort place, is to put the paint on the paper like first, and then go from there. Even if I have some type of like schema in mind, like in a general way, I still am always going to, just my personality, I'm always going to start off with that, like just go mentality. So for me, the first thing is always going to be trying to get that first sound out. That's going to be the first step, is get that out first.
We talked to Forbes Graham on the show, and he talked about extensively like creating this definite form first before he even put a note on the page, before he did anything. So he knew kind of how long it was going to be and what the building, as it were, was going to look like. But you're saying you're kind of the opposite of that.
Yeah, I'd say probably on that spectrum, I would be like, cause I think it's this spectrum where like, unless you're totally just like, grab the thing and just start right then, there's going to be a little bit of like, kind of like, maybe I'm at least going to like know like where in general is my hand first going to go, even if it's that simple. Sure. But I would never, for me personally, it's never this cognitive like process where I'm shaping it first. Like at the very most, it would be like more of like maybe more of like a mood type of thing. But even then, like I pretty much I would be kind of the opposite. It's like 100% start with whatever happens and like figure it out.
So that's great. So it's this spontaneous thing. It's this thing that happens when you're either motivated, like you said, from an internal, like, desire to create, or a deadline. Like, hey man, we need the parts by, So where do you go first then? When you get that impulse or you get that deadline, what do you reach for? Do you reach for pen and paper? Do you reach for the guitar? Where
usually guitar. Yeah, usually I'm going to reach for the guitar, just because I think that was my first, I play some different instruments, but that was my first love, like, at like 12 years old, being like, guitar, and so it's just the thing that is the most, like, it's the thing that I can turn off. It was just kind of weird, because even though like the more information you have about how to procedurally do something, the harder it can be to get out of the way. But I think because if you've been playing something long enough, so I'm like almost 40, started playing like every day for hours when I was like 12. So I think if you play something long enough, maybe there's a little bit of a difference there where you then can turn off like super easily, because your hands, they can explore without you needing to think about it, consciously.
Yeah, I think for our generation, I think guitar was kind of like the gateway instrument to music, what I mean? And after that, it was all downhill. But but that tended to be, and I remember as a young, person learning the guitar, I was like, I can't wait for the time when I'm no longer thinking about fingering. I'm no longer thinking about the technical process, and I can just like create what I'm hearing in my head.
Exactly. And so I think because of that, I go to that first. But if it's something else, which is one of the other cogitations you have on there, which I didn't necessarily single out, but the one about creative medium. And so I'm of that style too, where I figure like I can't play a bunch of instruments really well, but if you put me in front of something that makes a sound, I am certainly going to be able to start doing something, unless it's like really technical with like a bowing thing I can't do or some type of
or you need like 10 years of experience on how to play the violin.
Exactly. But like, so I think I go for the guitar because it's for me, it's the easiest way for me to get like that sense of agency out of the way. And because I want to start with something that feels a little bit separated from me, like it's something that I'm seeing that I can then work with. So I think guitar, I can do that easier, but it depends. Any instrument I go to, I'm going to basically, and probably the less skill I have at an instrument, the more, I'm just going to just start exploring it, and try to turn that exploration into something.
So where do we go next then? So you have this idea, you've kind of worked through it on the guitar. Do you turn to a DAW and record it? Do you get other people involved? Like what's sort of the next step in the creative process? Yeah,
so I'd say I'd first need to try to get that thing out and then kind of just like get into that listening mode where I'm just trying to like, let the hands do what they're doing, listen, and then I'm like kind of listening to it more so than like actively trying to do it. And then I'm just like kind of waiting for whatever catches me and like going to that. And I know that there's that point when suddenly something coalesces and suddenly like, oh, there's the pattern. Oh, there's the structure. So I just love that process. To me is like my favorite part is watching the structure come out of some type of chaos, even if it's not like crazy chaos, but the chaos of, I don't know where this is going. So it's just going to go. And then, so I hear that pattern. So once usually I get that, that's usually kind of like where Forrest was talking about getting that thing worked out ahead of time. I pretty much kind of in that moment when I then hear that form emerge, I usually have something snap on. I'm like, so then my brain does kind of go, what he's talking about. Okay, wait a minute. I see, this is interesting. Oh, this is going to, so there is this kind of like 2-part process going where your hands are just still going, but you are then like catching something going, oh, I foresee what this maybe, what kinds, and like very vaguely, but I foresee that this is something that can be something,
Yeah. I think it's interesting you said about enjoyment too, like, enjoying different parts of the process, right? Yeah. So from like, some people just love to be inspired.
Yeah.
And they hate doing everything else. Some people love that, like that moment when you're like, I've got this idea.
Yeah.
Right. And other people, I'm a big person. I love like having just this mess and then putting it all together, like finding a structure for it. Yeah. So how do we get from the inspiration, the sort of the I have an idea, to structuring? How do we get to that sort of end recording? Just
as close to as I can to the point in which I first have noticed that it's happened, and then I like it. Like what you were saying, once I took this mess of what was coming out, and once it's something, I try to immediately get it recorded. Because just my experience over time, and it's still like if I'm learning like a cover song or something, that first time you get it right, it's like so amazing. Like that was so, and then every time after that, it's just degrees in quality. No, and it's like, so I definitely try to get like there right away and like get that onto the DAW like right away, whatever the core like piece of that is, and then like that kind of leads into my process in general is start with one piece of something that I think is really like magical to me, whether it's the rhythm, whether it's this little pattern, get that recorded, and then just like I was saying, get the paint on the paper. It's on the paper then, and then I can just build on it. So then for me, it's just a lot of then getting it down, listening, and then usually just improvising layer after layer to figure, until I hit some saturation when I'm like, okay, that's just what I want it to be at that point.
It's interesting. I work with a lot of young songwriters, and they'll bring in the demo and it'll be this amazing vocal performance that it like has so much emotion. It's like that 2 a.m. recording. It's just like, but there's technical problems.
Yeah.
So then they'll come into the studio and use the nice mics and record it. But for some reason it feels flat. and they don't understand that. They're like, why is that? And I think it goes to what you're talking about, that like magic when you yourself are excited about it. Yeah. You can hear that, I think, in the performance.
That what you're saying, it's interesting to hear you say that, because that is like story of my life when it comes to recording, which is why I try to record most things myself, is because like if I go to like where I live, there's only like one kind of studio that is like accessible to me. And I've done some stuff there because he has better mics than me and stuff.
Sure. Yeah.
And I would basically only want to go there for singing, because it's like the other things I'm like, no, I want to be able to do that in my closet, like until the vibe is just right on my guitar or whatever.
Sure.
But so I'd go there for the mics, but then I'd always have the issue you're saying, which is that if I recorded like on my phone, it was better than what the performance I could get out. And it just kills me to the point that I'm like, what can I do? Like the only option would be, and even if you're doing it yourself, sometimes it's like you're sitting on your bed at like 2 a.m. is when it sounds right. And the second you grab the recorder and hit record, it's almost like observer effect and like physics. It's like you've killed something. Like I really believe that happens sometimes too with, and I don't know how much of that is just the difference between hearing it and then recording it. But I don't know if you've had that, but once you hit that record button, sometimes it's like, mojo is just drained as soon as you hit it.
You know, we often call it like the red light syndrome, right? You know, and that's not something referring to something else.
Yeah,
that's recording, but it's a real thing. You know, a fantastic singer that sings on stage and is just amazing gets into that booth, and all of a sudden now this is the recording that is going to be the take that everyone's going to hear from now till the end of time. And the second a singer realizes
it's over.
Like it's over.
It's like your throat closes up and you're breathing more shallow. Like physically, I'm sure that there's like that there's things that we're not noticing, like hyperventilating, but I'm sure that things are So because of that, like I try to get to that first thing down immediately. And then there's this more longer process of listening really carefully to all the little nuances and be like, oh, should I pull that down? So this is this. So I'm not one of those people. It's like, it's got to be the way it came out of me, like for it to be legit. But I feel that's the magic. So for this one, it was rhythm. It was just like starting with this rhythm. I was like, oh, I really like this rhythm. I recorded right from the beginning, like one whole track that was basically the rhythm all the way up into the point in like the middle where the song kind of falls apart. There's like a part in the middle where it pretty much clearly like falls apart and it's like stops almost.
So I think is that at the gong? It's like there's like a gong or a cymbal at that point.
Exactly. Yeah. So right there, that piece was all one thing, and that would have been the core, that rhythm. And then it was going back through it, and kind of just improvising to that rhythm. So one thing I did on this one was at first, I was improvising to that rhythm and getting some things I liked. And then at a certain point, it was that thing. I'm like, no, this is redundant. Now I'm just doing these things that I'm not even liking what I'm hearing. And so I was kind of like totally stumped. I'm like, I don't know where I'm going to go. And so what I did on that one was I said, okay, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to not listen to the rhythm section. I'm going to, with just like palm mute, get the rhythm on my acoustic of what that rhythm is, because I know it well enough. I know exactly what it is. And then I'm going to start recording that, not listening to anything else, just recording that, and just then in the middle of it, start soloing on the acoustic, but without hearing anything. And so I did that. And then I did the thing when I then, rewind it, turn them back up together. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's way better. And I'm sure it isn't exactly on time as well as it rest of it. But to me, it was like, so that was my first experience, I think, being like, oh, it like, I knew it, but I'm like, it can really work as a technique to purposefully take these, purposefully take things that you didn't create exactly together and like mash them. And then after that, where it kind of that part ended, this one really had something for me, which I think you'll be able to relate to, of wanting to let it completely fall apart into chaos. Like I wanted to just let it, because the beginning was kind of so straightforward, like almost like flamenco-y, just like guitar. I'm like, I'm going to let this completely fall apart 100% till there's nothing left in it. And then I'm going to see how I can like get out of it, type of thing. Which I do that a lot because when I do live stuff, it's usually alone. So I'm always doing like multiple looper stuff. And so, when you do that, you run into chaos, whether you want to or not.
Unless you have like a click track and it's just like perfect and it's an in-ear monitor type situation, there's going to be, or you have to build into the song points where you can stop and start over again.
Turn this one down a little bit. And
Or it's just like you come to a dead stop, or like you said, like you just embrace the falling apart and make that part of the song.
Yeah. So with that one, and so because I do that a lot with the loop pedals, I got a necessity, like so many times that you think you have this idea on a loop pedal, what's happening, and then something happens and you miss it by a little bit and it's just over. So because of that, I was like, okay, I'm going to try that same technique, like with recording. That was probably the first time I really I think purposely was like, I'm going to take this thing that's sounding pretty good the way it is and could maybe just be this, and I'm going to purposely just like destroy it kind of, and then see what happens. Which I loved, because then, so what I ended up doing next on this one, once that gong happens, which was actually a singing bowl, once that singing bowl happens and it kind of falls apart, I then took the mallets. What were these mallets for? I think they were gong mallets. And I laid the acoustic guitar, and I just started, I think I was holding the chords with one hand and I was just malleting the strings. So when it comes back out of that gong, so it falls apart. And when it comes back into like the kind of the da-na-na, like the chord rhythm again, it's actually just the mallet hitting the acoustic strings. So sometimes I just want to create play music, not to create something, just not going to record it, not going to try to develop it into anything. I just feel like I need to play music.
Yeah.
And if I'm away from an instrument for very long, like if I go somewhere, that's when I really notice that, like you start to feel this weird thing and you're like, oh, there's a piano over there. Like, can I mess with that piano, or can I do?
Yeah.
So there's that one. And if it's that, then there's the outcome, I guess, would be the experience. Like then it's some type of emotional experience, or just, I don't know exactly what that is, but that's a different type of thing. And I think that if like I was playing with, I live way out kind of in the country, I don't have anybody around who I can play music with or anything. So I think if I was playing with other people, that would fit into that too, where sometimes you're just going to play with people for the experience of having fun playing with people.
Yeah.
So there's
be cover songs. It could be like horrible 80s hair metal, but you're like, just
like, let's have fun. And like, so there's that side of it. So I'd say the outcome in that is different. It's like this lived experience outcome or whatever. But then the other side, a lot of times if I'm going to record, I'm doing it to record it, or I'm doing it specifically because I have a show coming up and I want to have some idea how I'm going to fill this like 45 minutes,
right,
and so then
there's
it's
a
like,
deadline.
Yeah.
There's
so I'm like,
deadline.
pull everything out, set everything up. I gotta mock this out a little bit just so, I'm not completely, because I have like get some like social anxiety and stuff. And so I tend to, if it's going to be live, I'm not just going to, as much like improv, I'm not just going to go in there and just be like, let's see, there's going to be a lot of wide open, let's see, but I'm not going to fully like, let's see.
Yeah. I even have it lately now so that it looks improvisatory on the stage, but it's like, I've been practicing it for weeks.
Yeah. You're practicing the form, or like within the form of it.
Yeah. Within that form. So did I play the exact note for note? Yeah. No, but it's fixed. I've practiced it. So then it looks, and you're giving them you're giving that same energy, because it is, like you're saying, it's not exact, and then they still get to see it being born. Yeah. Right. So because of that, I'd say in those situations, if I'm recording it or if I'm doing it intentionally, then there's definitely an outcome like in mind, but it isn't like this outcome of it's going to be this type of song or it's going to be this key. And it's not that. It's more of that I just like to be surprised, and I like to take that journey. And like you were saying, I like to see what is going to happen and what I can make out of the mess that eventually will happen. Mm-hmm. The one thing that I go back to, and it kind of goes back to what we were talking about with the recording process of capturing that take that is the one, or has that quinta estina, or has that fifth element.
Yes.
And capturing that, because maybe that's honest. Maybe that's like an honest thing. And I think I'd like to think the common denominator behind things that are popular is that on some level, somebody in the production at some point we captured a bit of honesty.
Something, yeah.
Maybe, or I don't know, maybe I had a great beat, or they marketed the hell out of it on Instagram. I don't know.
That's the hard part to know. It's that difference between, exactly. It's like you want it to be that one, and then you're like, but is it this other thing also? But I think that's a really good point too about like that, because I've often, when people try to ask me like, well, about process, I'm always like, it's that thing you can't say. I'm just like, I don't know what it is. It's like, I'm waiting for like, well, how do you know when something's like the right take? And it's like, it's what you just said. It's like, I don't know. And I would always go to like these, I don't know. It's like some type of like energy stuff. And it always comes out sounding like foofy and kind of weird and hippie. They're like, oh, okay. But you're like, no, seriously. It's like some type of, it is some type of thing that you can't quite, put into words.
And you feel it.
Yeah.
You feel it. Like you were saying, we were talking about with the groove, like feeling the groove. Like I feel like it's a mental thing, but it's a physical thing.
Yeah, exactly. And there's so much more to be known in terms of like, what is that? Like, what is it that sound waves can come out, you vibrate, and they can hit your eardrums. And sometimes it gives you the chills and it makes you so inspired. It makes you want to dedicate your life to that instrument or something. And other times it's like nothing.
Turn it down.
Absolutely.
Other times it's like, turn it down.
Yeah, or worse, like you said, absolutely nothing. It's just like,
or
I
absolutely
could take
nothing.
This or leave this. This is like, why did someone take the time to make this? Like, what was the point of this? This is so boring.
Yeah, nothing's worse than if you say something. This happens all the time in teaching, by the way. But nothing is worse than when you say something that is like, you're like, this is the profound thing, the nugget of information that I want to provide to you. Uh-huh. If I was hit by a bus after this class, please remember this. And it's just zombie, just nothing.
Like, you're thinking
nothing.
Someone's just going to be like, whoa,
like that's great. Yeah. Even if they disagree, if they're like, that's absolutely wrong,
you want to engage.
I think you're ridiculous. Yeah. I'm like, okay, cool. Like, great. At least you heard me.
But you know what? It's kind of like, because I work in the world of psychotherapy, and it seems to me a lot like a bid for like, affection, or a bid for attention. It's a bid for engagement. So if you're bidding, so I think a lot of musicians, get so depressed at, on the underground kind of level, because they want to make a connection. They just want that, like you said, that one person to go, hey, like, I see what you see, like, because you wouldn't be continuing to do this your whole life if you didn't see something special with what you were doing. So they want someone to say, and so if no one's saying that to you, you almost, it's like a person walking down the street, alone, just looking for someone to talk to, just looking for a friend. And everyone they talk to is just like, that's what it feels like. I mean,
or on their phone. On their phone.
And like when you're sending out your stuff, emailing your stuff around, and like you just get nothing back. And like when I've talked to friends who are like wanting to get like their record out, and I'll be like, okay, well, like how many places did you like reach out to? They're like, well, none yet. I'm like, no, you have to reach out to like 100 to get one person to give a even respond to you.
And just be like, this is, it might be even just like, it might be automated. Like sometimes you're getting a robot.
Like,
you're just getting a robot. We're not accepting anything in the funk blues genre in the fiscal year.
Yeah.
And like,
but getting to nothing is just it's just like, does that mean they didn't hear it? Did that mean they ignored it? Did that mean they heard it and they hated it? It's like, whatever it means, you did not connect.
Is my email broken? Is my email broken?
You can always follow up. Is your email broken? I've noticed you did not respond to my
Then they'll send you, then the legal HR department will send you an email.
Exactly. Cease and desist.
Cease and desist. Yeah. You're like, well, I made a connection.
Exactly. That would be a connection. You'd be like, well, will you listen to it? Exactly. Yeah. So I think it is. There's something very lonely if you can't make that connection, with anybody that you're playing music to.
Well, it's been fantastic. We're about out of time here. Thanks so much for sharing your opinions and your ideas with us here, or with me. Before I let you go, where can we go to find out more about you and your music?
Probably I have social media, Instagram and Twitter and whatever. Those places, just my Prana Crafter at those places, or just maybe my Discogs, just search Prana Crafter Discogs. They'll have anything on there.
Thanks to Will for sharing his time and music with us. As always, if you like this episode, please check out other episodes in the series and subscribe, or leave a comment on your preferred podcasting app. I'm Dr. Doug Bielmeyer, and this has been The Process.